The Loyal Guardian, a heartbreaking tale of love and devotion. In a small town nestled in the heart of America, there was a man named Jack. He was an ordinary soul, living a simple life. Jack had no interest in grandiose dreams or material wealth. His world revolved around the small pleasures in life, his job at the local mechanic shop, his close-knit family, and his loyal companion, a golden retriever named Max. Max was no ordinary dog. He was more than a pet. He was Jack's best friend, his confidant, and his protector. Max was by Jack's side every day, whether he was fixing a car, enjoying a quiet evening on the porch, or simply taking a walk through the town. Max's fur shone like sunlight on a spring morning, and his eyes, filled with loyalty, were always fixed on Jack. The bond between them was so deep that it seemed as though they could communicate without words, understanding each other in ways no one else could. One fateful evening, however, that bond was put to the test. Jack was at work in his shop, tightening a bolt on an old truck, when he suddenly collapsed. The room spun around him, and his chest tightened in unbearable pain. He tried to call out for help, but the world went black. He fell to the cold concrete floor, unconscious, his body unable to handle the stress that had built up over the years. When Jack's co-workers arrived, they found him unresponsive. They immediately called an ambulance, and Jack was rushed to the hospital. Doctors later determined that Jack had suffered a severe heart attack, one that left his heart struggling to beat properly. His family gathered at the hospital, anxious and scared, hoping against hope that Jack would pull through. But there was something no one could understand, something missing that could not be explained by medicine alone. Max was not with Jack. Max did not know that his best friend was lying unconscious in a sterile hospital bed, connected to life support machines. The only thing Max knew was that Jack had left him. A dog's vigil. Back at home, Max sat in the small yard that Jack had built with his own hands. Max had spent countless afternoons lying on the porch beside his owner, watching the sunset. But tonight was different. Jack hadn't come home. Max paced back and forth at the door, his paws clicking against the hardwood floor. He would stop and sniff at the air as though searching for his owner's scent. The stillness in the house was deafening to him. Every few minutes, Max would look up at the door, waiting for it to open, for Jack to walk in as he always had. But there was no sign of Jack. Max's tail drooped, and his ears flattened against his head in confusion. He had never been left alone like this before. Max barked a few times, but his barks were tinged with desperation. He wasn't just calling out to anyone, he was calling out to Jack, the one person he trusted above all else. The hours passed slowly, and Max grew restless. He circled the yard, his paws digging into the dirt, as if trying to find a way to bring Jack back. But there was no answer. Neighbors and friends of Jack's came by to check on Max. They saw his sad eyes and tried to coax him inside, offering food and shelter. But Max refused. His loyalty to Jack was unshakable. He would not leave. The idea of seeking comfort from anyone else seemed foreign to him. Max needed to be by the door, just in case Jack returned. Sarah, Jack's wife, visited Max the following day. She walked slowly up to the door, her heart aching for the dog that seemed to understand more than anyone. "Max," she called softly, "come inside, boy." But Max merely sat by the door, his eyes fixed on the street, waiting for Jack to appear. He did not respond to Sarah's calls, as though he had made a promise to Jack that he would wait for him. The hospital. A man's struggle for life. Inside the hospital, Jack's condition grew critical. He lay unconscious, his chest rising and falling slowly with the help of the ventilator. Doctors and nurses worked tirelessly to stabilize him, but they were uncertain whether Jack would ever wake up. His heart was weak, and his body was too frail. The machines that monitored his vitals beeped incessantly, a cold reminder of how fragile life can be. Sarah sat at Jack's bedside, holding his hand. The doctors had told her that Jack's chances of surviving were slim. He had fought for so long, but his body was giving up. Sarah's heart ached as she looked at her husband, wishing there was something more she could do. The man she loved was slipping away, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. But even in his unconscious state, Jack seemed to hold on to life. It was as though his spirit was waiting for something or someone. The days turned to weeks. Days passed, and still Max refused to leave the front door. He would sit there for hours on end, staring at the road. Occasionally he would stand and walk around, but his steps were slow and his movements were heavy. He looked lost, broken even. As the days turned into weeks, the community began to notice Max's vigil. People would stop by to check on him, offering food, water, and kind words, but Max would not budge. Some tried to open the door, hoping to bring him inside, but Max stood firm, refusing to enter. At the hospital, Sarah was growing weary. She tried to bring Max to visit Jack, but security would not allow it. The hospital had rules, and Max was not permitted inside. Sarah's heart ached every time she had to leave the hospital, knowing that Max was waiting outside in the cold alone. A miracle of devotion. It was on the 13th day of Jack's coma when something extraordinary happened. Max, who had not eaten or rested properly for days, suddenly stood up and began walking toward the street. He moved slowly, his body stiff from exhaustion, but there was a determination in his eyes that had not been there before. Max walked through the yard, past the fence and onto the road. His steps were hesitant, but there was a new sense of purpose in his movements. He seemed to know where he was going. Max made his way to the hospital, one painful step at a time. It wasn't an easy journey. The road was long and his body was weak, but Max didn't stop. He couldn't stop. As Max reached the hospital, he collapsed on the front steps, too tired to continue. The hospital staff, seeing the exhausted dog, finally allowed Sarah to bring him inside. Max's arrival was almost like a sign. The moment he walked into Jack's hospital room, something miraculous occurred. Jack's hand twitched. His heart, which had been so fragile for days, suddenly beat stronger. The machines that monitored him beeped in a rhythmic pattern, as though Jack's body had found the strength to fight back. Sarah watched in awe as Max walked over to Jack's bedside and lay down next to him. The dog's head rested gently on Jack's lap, and Jack's fingers slowly stroked Max's fur. It was as though Jack's spirit had been awakened by his best friend's presence. The power of love and loyalty. For hours, Jack remained unconscious, but there was a change in the air, a sense of peace. The family and doctors began to notice small improvements in Jack's condition. His vital signs stabilized, and his heart showed signs of strength. It was a miracle, and everyone in the hospital could feel it. Max stayed by Jack's side, never leaving, just as he had always done. His devotion had brought Jack back to life. A reunion, the end of a long wait. It wasn't long before Jack began to wake up. His eyes fluttered open, and the first thing he saw was Max, lying beside him, his head resting peacefully on Jack's leg. Jack's hand reached out slowly to pet Max, and in that moment, the bond between them was stronger than ever. Jack's recovery was slow, but it was steady. Max never left his side, and as the days went by, the two were inseparable once again. Jack's family marveled at the miracle that had occurred, but they all knew that it was Max's love and loyalty that had made the difference. In the end, the bond between a man and his dog had proven to be stronger than life itself. Jack recovered, and he and Max went back to their simple life. But neither of them ever forgot that long wait, the wait that showed them both the true power of devotion and the strength of a bond that no one could ever break.